Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News. It is Tuesday, September 2nd. Greetings from South California and South Florida and everywhere else south of the Mason-Dixon line. And we are going to talk about something that is occurring on a consistent basis. I know a number of people have written articles on here before, similar subject, but obviously, as the world evolves online and what we're seeing with these online entities and how media is being manipulated further and further every day, especially with our new friend, the artificial intelligence pod, and what you're going to see happen with that in the next, I'd say within a year or 2 years, if they can get themselves to the point of saturation that they want, is going to be an even more tight and censorship driven organization than there already is. And let's get into a little bit of what we will be talking about, which are what we call the arbiters of truth, which is what the situation is now that we are dealing with. I'm sure you've all seen a number of things going out there. One person will have a scandal. There'll be a scandal. Another person will pick up on it. A third person will pick up on it. They will all refer back to the first person. And we have said, tell you before, what we would call the self-licking ice cream cone, which is nobody goes and does any actual research. They go and refer to the first person's article, even if it's full of discrepancies, untruths, whatever, even if it's surely vindictive, because that first person's already gotten so many clicks or whatever. I keep the thing going, I will get so many clicks, et cetera, et cetera. And then if it's something that was a topic that we can just break out and be done with, most of our topics we cover it first, and then we'll come back as different people have contacted us and look at different aspects, which is an entirely different story than dragging out some, housewife angst, estrogen ridden, whatever hate piece for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 installments when it could have been handled in 5 minutes. And most of the time, you'll be screaming down other people that are saying, hey, that's not true, or this or that, and the other thing. And we will also have to worry as we go along where you stand in the social credit score of the internet, which you see is actually a very real thing. We'll use Joe Rogan, as we always do, or Sean Ryan, or Mr. Beast, or any of these other ones that are in the stratosphere. And then the gigantic margin from them down to, let's say, a lot of the people that are doing the stuff that we're talking about, and then which may be 100,000 views or something like that. I don't really go by the membership because that can be faked on different platforms. I'm not too big with YouTube. I don't really care for YouTube. We deal mostly in other things. But the fact of the matter is the world is changing. The truth has always been changing. And then what are we talking about here, which is truth or clickbait? You know, what is the outrage economy, which is what I have been watching the last week or so, is mostly what we would call the outrage economy. Okay. So this is a different cultural shape, as we'll say, and sometimes it distorts your shared reality. Okay. We're going to talk into two interconnected issues: the rise of influencers who cloak sensationalism as truth, and the unfavorable loop, which is where we are now, where hate, outrage, negative commentary, etc., become the most profitable content. Okay, hate sells, right? We'll explore what's fueling these problems and what you can do about it, or we can do about it, which there are things you can do other than just say, hands up, I'm never going to look at things again, which is always probably your best thing. You could always go read a book, right? So let's talk about the outrage industrial complex, because that's basically a term that's been coined. I didn't come up with it, or the OIC. The OIC is the powerful ecosystem of media outlets. Most of the stuff I'm going to say is from a quote, so you know what we're talking about. So we're all on the same page, okay? It's a powerful ecosystem of media outlets, social influencers, political campaigns, and more, all profiting by stoking your fury. Okay. It capitalizes on emotional response, pushing us toward righteous indignation to trigger engagement, all too often at the cost of the truth. I'm sure you can think of some things you've seen online which will lead right into that when you know, hey, that's not really true, or straw man, or this or that or the other thing. Okay. This sensationalism, sometimes called outrage porn, which is a funny term too, intentionally provokes outrage. It is fueled by the algorithms that amplify conflict because it converts directly to clicks. I'm outraged. Let me see what this guy says. Oh, I hate that son of a bitch. Let's see what's going on. Okay. I'm doing the clicking down here. You can't see me. The result you have is a media landscape where drama and not accuracy for sure gets the airtime. And unfortunately, it started basically under political propaganda, and the people have been dumb enough or smart enough to grasp onto that and use it pretty much in every other facet of internet. It's not journalism, but internet podcasting has tons and tons of it now. So we look at it as an influencer as a misguided arbiter of the truth. Most influencers, right, a new breed especially that you're seeing out there, are the self-appointed truth tellers, who trade substance for spectacle. They often build followings by harsh narratives, divisive commentary, but do we call them truth bearers or simply clout chasers? They will tell you that they are, through divine revelation, possessed of the truth of a situation. There's one thing to say, I will give you facts of a situation. I will give you examples of what is occurring. I will give you models of this. These are all fine. If I tell you, brother, Jesus told me this is how we're going to do this, or trust me, I was this person in a past life, or trust me, I was employed by these people, or trust me, I was miscongeniality, any of that shit where you're putting some golden calf in between you and the truth, that would be this truth teller type. That is a clout chaser. That is usually going to be some type of liar, for lack of a better term. I'm going to blow my whole video by saying that, yeah, it's pretty much how it's going to be. These influencers thrive on negativity. They are out there drawing attention, even sympathy. In some places, if you read comments, which I had unfortunately read for the last week, through inflammatory content. It's a distortion of journalism's original mission, objective inquiry grounded in evidence. That's what you're supposed to be doing if you're making certain types of videos. If you just say, I think this guy's a dick, that's fine. If you say, I think this guy's a dick, and I have proof, and the proof doesn't exist, or it's sham, or it's framed in such a manner, then no, you don't. Okay. And that is what we see a lot of times, as you know, from just watching even the normal news. Okay. Let alone any of these videos where someone's like, I've got to get to 6 million viewers. I've got to get to this. I've got to get to that. That's the golden number, whatever the golden number is, right? It's usually like 100,000. 10,000, 20,000 actually should be enough, but 100,000 is where everybody thinks their world is going to really catch fire. The problem is if you don't do something with original content, but we'll talk about that later, right? So you have what we would call counter speech. And there's an actual thing called the hashtag I am here movement. Okay, so not all is lost by getting ground down by these guys. One powerful response has emerged. It's called counter speech, a method that confronts hate or misinformation, not with shaming or silence, but with calm, factual resistance. The hashtag I am here network is a striking example of it. This is for you to understand and go look up yourself. It is an actual thing. Hashtag I am here. It was founded in Sweden in 2016. It's a citizen-powered movement which trains volunteers to engage respectfully in comment sections, countering hate with logic and empathy. And trust me, it's hard to do. I've actually followed a number of principles which came from a different place. The Swedes are involved in it too. They didn't invent this stuff. This has been going on for a while now, but they do have a very good system. If you're a part of an organization, a community network, or whatever, a baseball team, whatever you are, and you're tired of everybody talking shit about you, you can go to this I Am Here network and they will explain how to handle it. And there are ways to handle it because some people, if you see, well, we'll finish this first. All right. By not directly confronting these trolls, okay, but speaking to the audience around them, it shifts public perception. Studies show this approach, and this is why we try to use it. I've used it, I think, with a pretty good effect in the last week or two, increases civility and reduces the sense that hateful views are mainstream. So think of it as saying, I'm here, and there's a more thoughtful way to talk about this. It does have real power. A lot of the trolls are just canaries, or parrots, whatever it is, the one that talks back to you. Says the same thing over and over again. I watched it on a comment section on something that we did, or I did, actually, I did it. And the fella just said some bullshit, and it was quickly refuted by a second party who came on and said, no, I know that person. And this is what he was talking about. And by the way, here's a link to it on YouTube. And then I was like, wow, I lost like 15 comments or something. Well, here it was. The guy took his down. So it eliminates everything that was, the give and take back and forth. So he knew his ass was busted. He knew he was just being a troll. He knew he was pushing negative shit to push negative shit. And they'll do it for a while. And then bang, this happened. And down it went, right? Because now you look like a total ass. Some people don't care. If you're going to do certain things for certain reasons, it's fire and forget. You never look at them again. However, some of these people want to get in there and mix it up, so to speak, with the other people. So here's a couple solutions, because awareness isn't actually enough all the time. And these are actual actionable defenses. Because why do I even bother with this? You say, well, these other people are also big and my life is inconsequential and your life is inconsequential. No, they aren't. And not just because God says so. When people are in this mindset where they go around kicking over your trash cans and doing this and that and talking shit about you, all I need to do is get outrage going. There is no one inconsequential enough, if I can stir up an outrage about them, that I can't benefit from it if you're in that sick mindset. So anybody is a victim or a potential victim or a potential target. So keep this in the back of your mind, or even when you're looking at things where people will say something online that is actually being derogatory. Like if you were to respond to something, say, well, no, by the law in the town and this and that, and your law in the city or law in the state, this, and this. And they'll say, you sound like you have an education. And I'm sure you're smart. But so that person doesn't respect everything that they say that they respect about you. They do not respect about you. Okay. It's more passive aggressive that way, because that's a person who thinks this a lot, but before the internet came around, could not say anything because somebody would punch them in the fucking face. You have to realize that that's what's occurred with the internet. It allows everybody, myself included, to have a moment of very dark thoughts when you're having a discussion or an argument or whatever you're doing, because there's no repercussion. The computer's not going to fight me. It's not going to explode, right? So that's when people got involved in doxing and things like that, because now there is a repercussion in their mind. I've told them where you lived. But the thing is, shoes on the other foot, let's say the FBI comes looking for you now. Well, now they know where you live, right? But you won't learn. So let's just try to look at some of these strategies for yourselves and see if you have interest in them. If so, great, hold them in the back of your mind and go from there. If you were out there, I can't tell you on how to have dialogues with people and things like that because it's becoming harder and harder and harder. Even in my short lifetime, the last 10 years, I've watched the breakdown of civility to such a point that I would be like, I don't know why more people aren't locking themselves in the house and never coming out, right? So here we go. Let's talk about some solutions. And these are actionable defenses, meaning you can do this yourself. Empowering counter speech networks. Okay. Just as I had said, you support training programs and tools like the Dangerous Speech Project's Counter Speech Toolkit. A lot of these you're going to see, you're like, hey, this is going after what I believe in. Does not matter. You can be the biggest Donald Trump supporter, which some of these are aimed to destroy, or you could be the biggest socialist, which these are there to help you a lot of times. The fact of the matter is, it's a methodology, and the methodology works. If I have a gun, my gun will kill atheists and Christians alike, or whatever. That's a bad thing to say these days, but you know what I'm saying. Bullet doesn't have a denomination. Training methods don't either. All right. So, like I said, dangerous speech projects, counter speech toolkit, help volunteers counter misinformation with empathy, not attacks. Okay, because that's what people are expecting. You're playing a chess game here, okay? Platform design interventions. That would be you if you're on a platform and something's going on. There's like bulletin board systems for a while. The woke shook people off of lots of bulletin board systems, music and art and all that other stuff. You introduce what we call a circuit breaker system that slow down viral viral things. Okay. Permit moderation review or flag emotionally charged content because it spreads uncontrollability. Okay. Just like any video where people are trashing the McDonald's or the food court. You don't want them to get to the point where they're trashing the McDonald's and the food court. So stop it before it starts. If you hear grumblings, you stop it then. Okay. That would be the circuit breaker. Flick it off. Nobody can go online. Somebody had told us about Andrew Wilson. Anybody? Andrew Wilson. So he, just an example. Once again, don't really know him. Don't say yes or no to what he's doing. I guess I get it. Um, he was on with some people that were incredibly racist against white people, which is funny, and wouldn't allow him to talk. Had one or two questions, just kept going back and back and back and back and back, but they were building themselves up. And since there was no moderator there, eventually the one guy threatened to kill him or was going to come to his house and kill him and seemed to be very serious about it. All right. So that can go very quickly in the wrong direction. If you had the circuit breaker, you would have cut the idiot off right away. Or you would have cut Andrew. Either person would have been cut off right away and it would have been done. All right. As far as policy regulations, you can adopt balanced duty of care frameworks. And most of this is going to be for bulletin board systems. If you have anything like that going on, using the internet for things, all right, which is reminiscent of the EU's Digital Services Act that requires platforms to mitigate harmful content while safeguarding legitimate public discourse. Even if you have this at your college, guys, or your high school, and you see shit going on that you don't like, you could say, hey, Mr. Whoever is in charge, I think we need to adopt a balanced duty of care framework here and just write what I just said, reminiscent of the EU's Digital Service Act. Look it up, write down what it is, and you send that letter certified mail to your school, okay, to whoever's in charge. Because you start sending, people are like, oh, certified mail, I can send an email. You can, and you should send an email, but you should also send a certified letter. Sounds stupid and old fashioned in this day and age, but between the two, something, their idea is, well, we lost all of our emails. Well, did you lose a certified letter too? That shows you're for real. Okay. And as for all of you guys out there that are doing videos, and there's a lot of really good stuff out there, if you stay away from the politics bullshit, there is a lot of really good journalism being done in general. There's a lot of good what would be the time non-combative themed videos being made because the production levels are so good these days. But you want to go out there and you want to say you're trying to reinvigorate journalism. They like the idea of the citizen journalist. The idea was when I can't even remember the year, but let's say if you look back at the time, there was a movie came out called Cry Freedom about Stephen Biko. And that was Peter Gabriel was involved in it, and Amnesty International was really on top of their game before they became just a political sham, right? And his whole project was to have these small cameras, little movie cameras, and give them out in problem areas so that people would videotape or photograph or whatever injustices being done. And then they could send them in, and then they would have it, black and white, as we would say in the old days, of what was occurring. And some of that worked. It didn't really, I guess it didn't catch on as well as they wanted to because there were probably people in that movement that did not want you to see what was going on because it would go against um, the narrative, but that's fine. But you have to understand that is the real thing you need. You need to invest in investigative and local journalism to restore trusted sources of truth, even if you have a local bullshit little newspaper like we do. Um, I know five or six people that it's gotten to the point where they'll tell us, I can only put you in here once every 6 months in your letter to the editor or whatever. I would think with an online service, you would have the room to have more than two letters to the editor. Most of the things we have here is because of scammy shit with the property development and things like that, pushing the neighborhoods out, jacking up prices of stuff, things like that, which do occur. It's not like it's a fantasy. But the six or seven people that are involved in being worried about that are limited to once every 6 months putting an article in. Now, that doesn't sound like real journalism to me, right? Is that real journalism? No, because you're worried what? There's a pumpkin carving thing going on, and the guy who runs the pumpkin carving thing is also the guy who is kicking out a bunch of old people so he can put in a new building, which will be empty for the next 2 years. That's what I'm saying. You've got to get real journalism somewhere. If people spent the time to look at a journalistic format or even a informational format to put things out there that are um, have citations, have show examples of things, this and that and the other thing. If you go to our page at southfloridaconservative.com, everything that I'm talking about here will usually have a page, or anybody else that we have has a page, and in it will be cited article. Okay, the article will have citations in it, and bang, boom, pop. Now you can say, okay, well, now I see where these guys are coming from. It's not just a bunch of nonsense. Okay. So what it is we are navigating a critical moment. The dominance of sensationalism and emotional exploitation is real, but so is our power to push back for now. So you can make a difference. You can support compassionate counter speech. You can choose trustworthy media. You can advocate for thoughtful platform design and regulation. If this episode resonates, if you want to subscribe, share, whatever, I don't care. If you don't want to subscribe and share on YouTube, go over to BitChute or Rumble, because that way we'll never make any money there, right? And let's rebuild spaces for meaningful dialogue. Okay, so that's about where we stand on this. There's a lot more that's going as this is an evolving project, but I'm sure a number of you now see, even in the articles that we did just in the last few days, like these exposés of like the one they have with this guy from the military and stuff like that, that these are definitely designed specifically to milk every last click out of the average guy or average outrage enthusiast, because you love to see people fail. People, for some reason, it's Schadenfreude, shameful joy, right? The hero must fail. The hero must be brought down. I never succeeded, so why should he succeed? I didn't get the pretty boy or girl. He shouldn't get the pretty boy or girl. Why should he be happy in his life and I'm not happy in mine? That's a psychological dynamic that you have to address in your own life. And if you just sit there and watch other people have these problems, it's not going to get you anywhere. As people would make fun of the president or past presidents, Bill Clinton, when he got in trouble for cheating on his wife, right? It was a true example, it's an easy example. The most outraged people seem to be married women because they looked at that as he was cheating on his wife. What a piece of shit, right? The guys that looked at it and the women that looked at it and were indifferent knew that the Clintons were a political couple. It would be no different than some 13th century king and queen who were put together to rule a country and he's cheating on her. Well, it's going to happen. It's a political marriage. The Obamas, same thing, political marriage, right? Because they've never done anything in their lives that be in politics. So you see that dynamic there, okay? But people were outraged and they would do more and more shows on the outrage and the outrage, whereas the Hillary was just mad that it was getting published so much. You know, that was from what I understand from people that were working in Secret Service at the time, was that was the big thing that pissed her off was she looked weak and she doesn't like to look weak and that made her look weak. If you know, so she had to play it sort of, she couldn't play it, boo hoo hoo, my husband's having sex with a younger girl when she's out there ordering, missile strikes on people. But you understand what I'm saying? They drug that cycle out way too long. Not that I care, but that's where it started and things like that in politics. So you wouldn't have to go out and do research like why didn't we ever fix that city in Ohio where the train went over on its side and polluted all the water? We've never done anything with that city. Why aren't people out there every week picking dead fish up and saying, "Hey, that fish fried from the inside out due to chemicals?" Because we're now wrapped up in all this hate bullshit, so it doesn't have any room for truth. So anyway, I don't get too Dennis Hopper on you, but that's where we stand. So otherwise, I hope you have a good week coming up, and I'll talk to you later on.